So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Chair Across the Aisle podcast for real people, real stories, and meaningful talks about the world around us. I know generally we do the political no-brainer podcast, but Adam, I believe you're more than politics, and you are the founder and the owner, the proprietor of Crowds on Demand, and your business is creating crowds. Essentially, if am I correct? Essentially, creating crowds for movements.
Correct. That's right, sir. So what we do is we're the largest protest company in the country. We organize protests, of course, legal, peaceful protests, respectful and persuasive. That's probably what we're best known for, but we organize audiences, kind of PR stunts for businesses, and even broader advocacy campaigns on behalf of a certain major issues, that are more on a long-term basis.
And not necessarily singled out to protest. PR campaigns, advocacy, and that's what America's all about, really, is a movement. What's the next movement that's going to make America greater and greater? And you're creating an opportunity for people to really create a momentum. Crowds, there's power in numbers. There's power
Yeah.
in numbers, absolutely, and there's power in voice. And American is very much a power in voice. Voice has not been silenced, and people have. So tell us, really, I want you to tell me about some of your next protest, about some of your next events. Let's not call them protests. Let's call them events.
Let me tell you what's trending right now because I don't want to share too much, but these are the kind of issues that I think are going to be very hot this year because like they're trending and they're important, right? Because I'll preface this by saying that what we like to do is take on causes that are not just part of the noise, not Israel, Palestine, not ICE, anti-ICE. These are kind of things that other people are speaking to at great length. I like to take alternative things that are not being pursued sufficiently. For example, these are a couple of things that I'd like to pursue. Number one, social media companies. These companies are a cancer on our society, right? This is the most addictive chemical imaginable. I'm sure that you know, and I know as well, people who have had their lives ruined by social media. They've gone down a rabbit hole, left wing rabbit hole, right wing rabbit hole, and you can't even recognize them anymore, right? And that's to say nothing about particularly young women who've been victims of these companies, right? I mean, I do think it's very interesting that Hoffman, who I think is the founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, Mark Zuckerberg, obviously founder of Meta, and Elon, Twitter, right? What's one thing that they all have in common?
Uh, I'm trying to think because Meta changed its name. Elon changed Twitter to X. I don't know. That's the only connection
They
I
were
can make.
all contacts of Jeffrey Epstein. They were all contacts of Jeffrey Epstein. So what does that say? What does that say? You know what I mean? They all were connected to Epstein. What did Epstein do? He groomed people. What does social media do?
They groom people. Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
so I
Yes.
think that this is something that people are becoming attuned to. I mean, look, to be clear, I'm not making any specific accusations against any of those three gentlemen, but I think that merely associating with him in the way that they did was completely irresponsible, and it kind of indicates like this is the character of the people who are running the social media platforms. You see what I'm saying? So you wonder why you're being fed this toxicity, right? Is that these are the people who are making those decisions, right? So it's a real problem. And it's something that I really want to tackle. I mean, we are known for pioneering the delete Facebook movement, which kind of actually caused Facebook to change their name to Meta. Isn't that interesting? But
That is fascinating.
it's kind of like entering witness protection. You have a different name, but like you're still doing the same things, right? So the thing is that this is addictive, right? So in terms of campaigns that we want to take on, this is a big one, right? And it's one that you can't trust the politicians to handle. Why? Because the tech industry bankrolls them, right? The tech industry bankrolls Republicans and Democrats, particularly these sorts of companies. So when you see Mark Zuckerberg in a hearing and some congressman or senator is screaming at him, that's like a performative sort of thing that isn't sincere because there's never been any serious attempt to take action. So, that's one thing that I'm very interested in taking on. Number two, fast food companies, right? I mean, Coach is in your name. You know about what is poisonous for people, and what you see in the company in the fast food industry is poison, right? This is an industry of they're it's all lab grown, designed to be very addictive. And one thing that is very interesting that you may have or may have not seen is the CEO of McDonald's, right? Was recently photographed. He posted a video of him like launching his new burger, and he like literally looked visibly disgusted by the burger. Like, this is a guy who does not eat this crap. You know what I mean? Is my guess. I mean, look at him. He looks healthy. So of course he's not eating McDonald's 4 times a week. I mean, it would be impossible. So like taking on fast food companies, particularly the juxtaposition, the disconnect between their public statements and their actions, right? So you see a McDonald's ad, like whenever you see a McDonald's ad, seriously, I swear to God, whenever I see a McDonald's ad, who was in the McDonald's ad, it's primarily black people, right? They're targeting black people with McDonald's, right? And black people have a higher incidence of diabetes and heart disease, right? Which stems from the fast food. So they're marketing it to black people. And then whenever anyone suggests anything about it, they're like, oh, well, we have this black person on the board, or we have this black person, we gave money to this African American charity, as if to suggest that undoes all of the damage that their products do to the health of Black Americans, right? So to me, taking on the fast food industry is important, especially because RFK Jr., who kind of came into office saying he was going to do all that, he's kind of been a paper tiger on this stuff, right? Like, he hasn't really done anything consequential in that movement. So it's important that these fast food monopolies, we have, like, what I'd like to see is like the smoking type label on fast food products, where people are free to consume them, but people should know what is in these products.
What's fascinating about that is the fact that, one, I talked to a fellow who always says the same thing. We a generation ago, we beat back cigarette consumption. We really did. And there wasn't an Adam Swart yet. There wasn't a crowds on demand, but somehow it took shape. And literally, cigarette companies were made responsible for creating their own negative advertising. And
Yeah.
that's a wonderful thing you're doing, is companies should at least take ownership of what they're producing and selling and
Yes.
what it's doing to us. And then when you mention RFK, I find that whole thing interesting, because really the person who didn't run on that foundation of healthy eating was Bloomberg, but yet it was a big part of his years in office and his years of mayor of New York City. He didn't make it the signature item, if you will use a restaurant jargon. He didn't make it the signature item of his campaign or his political career, but it very much was a signature item.
It was.
Whereas
And
whereas RFK and Donald Trump was smart enough, not getting political, smart enough to bring him on. Bring him
they're very
on.
smart. He has very good. Trump's obviously has very good political instincts, as everyone knows. I mean, anyone who underestimates his political instincts is stupid. But the in regards to Bloomberg, I don't 100% agree with what Bloomberg did in regards to. I think what Bloomberg did was he said you couldn't buy the XL sodas. I mean, I'm a capitalist. Like, I think people should be allowed to buy what suits them, but I think the problem is it's an education issue, is people don't fully understand, like, this is poison. So if you're coming in, I would wager, like, McDonald's customers who are walking in, I will wager 20% kind of know, okay, this is crap, but this is my like weekly treat. I really like it. Okay, fine, that's great. 80%, I don't think they fully understand just how bad this stuff is. So they're just consuming it, like without even thinking about it. So I'm more focused on the 80% saying like let's make sure that they are aware of what they're consuming. I don't I don't agree with Bloomberg that you should actually like not allow people to consume certain things.
No, absolutely not. I don't agree with him. I just think when you think of the contrast, the fact of the matter
Yeah,
is, whether he was right or wrong, it was never, I never even saw it in a campaign ad that when I become mayor, I'm going to do this. But he
true.
did it. He very much did it. It was very much, and you, like you said, you look at a 90-year-old man who's in pretty good health. I mean, he's at least in good shape. I don't know. I haven't talked to his physician lately, but he looks like he's in good shape. And so, and I've always said, I've literally can say, and I don't eat a lot of McDonald's, but truthfully, when I've gone there with my kids to do homework, I've never had a bad experience. And
Yeah,
they've made it they're very good at what they do. And the truth is, the whole drive-through, a lot of times I talk to a lot of general managers of McDonald's, they say a big portion of their business is done through the drive-through.
yeah,
Whereas if you're gonna go to an independent owner's healthy living restaurant, you've literally got to sit down. They don't have the option of a freestanding building that they built and
yeah.
designed and made it perfectly accessible for lots of people driving by. I mean, let's just put
Yeah,
it
I'll
simple.
tell
They're
you,
not.
there's a business that's in the Southwest United States and expanding called Salad and Go that I think is a amazing concept and should be expanded because their salads that are full entree salads are $6.50. So more or less what you'd pay at McDonald's. And they're well sufficient for a meal. And they do have drive-through space. That's what they
That's
are.
beautiful, and
But
that's
I
really
don't
what
think
we
you
need to
see
get
enough
to.
of that. So I think that I agree that I think there's McDonald's makes it easy, but I think it's also about education so that people understand, hey, if you want that easy option, here are other options. But salad and go, I mean, $6.50 for fresh ingredients. I mean, look, that's an amazing deal, and I think that I hope that they expand because giving people that ability to who are on that like shoestring kind of budget to be able to still have a good lunch for $6.50 is amazing.
Absolutely. And like you said, so like there are these warning labels on cigarettes. McDonald's will never concede to put a warning label on their Big Mac box. Eating this four times a week is entirely too much. It's not healthy. They will never concede to that. So people need to know from Adam Swart and his organization and through education, you can't do this 6 times a week. It doesn't matter how convenient it is. You've got to pack a salad, buy a Tupperware. I know it's a lot more difficult, but we need to get that word out. And that's something you're doing. And I think it's incredibly it would change so much in America. Literally the cost of healthcare would change if we made it happen on an enormous on a 60% human consumption scale.
So these are
So
hot topics today, and these are things that I'm very interested in taking on. I imagine I'll take on other things unrelated to that as well, but these are the issues that I think are so important to grapple with today because these are the common thread in both of those are they deal with addiction, right? They deal with addiction and they deal with kind of taking on very entrenched, very powerful interests that the government is never going to take action on without public pressure. Because the purpose of protest is, in one sense, and these advocacy campaigns, is to bring attention and to almost force the government and policymakers to grapple with it and the public at large to grapple with it, right? So it's to make the message so loud that you can't ignore it, right? So that's the purpose of it because the challenge is if you have billions of dollars, so one misinformation part about my business is, oh, we're serving the ultra wealthy. What's interesting is like if you're in the billions, right? If you're big tech, big pharma, right? You don't need me. You make contributions to every congressperson, every super PAC. You own Congress at that point, right? They all owe you, right? So why do you need to protest? You don't. The people who use our services are startup companies, mid-sized businesses, chamber like local chamber of commerce types, right? Like organizations that are trying to, certainly wealthy individuals that are trying to get something on the map, but that lack the funds or the infrastructure to essentially control Congress as these big industries do. Pardon me.
Bless you. No, absolutely, and it's incredible what you do, and it's incredible the passion you have because, and that's why I love having you on the shows because you're, like you said, you're not reaching out to the wealthiest companies in the world. You're
Yeah,
actually, it's not just protest on demand, it's not just crowds on demand, it's advocacy. It's so much education. It's so much a piece of education, and it's an important part of life that we have your company doing these things because we are bringing to attention a lot of things that can make a significant difference in a lot of people's lives. Health is wealth. It's
yes.
not necessarily financial wealth. Financial is not necessarily the only wealth. Health is wealth, and once it's gone, it's gone. Whereas financial, you can kind of lose it all and get it back.
That's
But
actually such a good point. That you say this. I saw this. One of the rare useful things I've seen on social media was like, if you have your health, you're a billionaire. And how do you explain that? Because if you asked any billionaire who's unhealthy, would they give it up to have their health back? Most of them would say yes.
all of them
No,
probably.
they all, yeah. So at the end of the day, like we should be grateful for the health that we have. So I think that's great. Grateful to God and grateful for our lives, whether we're religious or not.
Right, and it's beautiful. I have faith. I love faith, but it's also beautiful to be knowledgeable. It's also beautiful to know what you need to do to be healthier, and that's something we really got to build on. And that's something you're doing. Is we'll never have that concession from McDonald's that says, "Hey, we see the president eating McDonald's every day. It's really not the thing to do. Maybe he's getting away with it. He's already 80 and he's still around, but not
A
necessarily
good
the right." Huh?
he's got good genes. I think the thing that people actually probably neglect about that is like he has good genes, right? So if he didn't eat McDonald's, he'd be even healthier. It's not like the McDonald's makes him healthy, it's that he would actually be healthier if he didn't eat McDonald's, I think. I mean,
Right.
the only kind of conflicting variable to that is like generally doing what makes you happy can also prolong your life. So to the extent that he enjoys McDonald's, I mean, maybe it's good. I mean, I have not seen his health, so I really don't know. But I feel my sense is um if he didn't eat McDonald's, he'd probably be healthier.
So what about any other movements? I know you said we might. I want to hear more from you, more movement, more stuff you're working on, because I think some of the stuff like, just like you said, what you're working on now is incredible. And social media, the understanding that,
The other thing that I think we have to work on is but this is something that's a little bit harder because it's not there's no industry to take on in this. But the challenge of the marriage gap in the United States. So we have a major problem in America, which is that we have a ton of single people and not pairing up causes a little bit of radicalization, right? So we have young men who, when young men are unable to find a match, they often kind of turn more right. When young women are unable to find the match, they often turn far left. Marriage has a way of kind of creating stability, right? Marriage, I mean, either marriage legally or marriage like pairing up, right? Creates stability, right? Because no one wants to be married to somebody who's online half the day, whether it's a left wing or right wing rabbit hole. So at the end of the day, having that other person in your life is good for that. So what we have a problem is we have, since the 60s, 70s, we've had feminism, which is awesome. Women deserve equal pay for equal work, et cetera, et cetera. But what it has created is you have women actually have higher levels of education than men, but women generally want to date up, not down. So if you are a woman who makes a good salary, you generally want a man with a better salary, right? It's a math problem for why that is hard because a man who has a good salary is a very in demand salary, wealth, whatever, is a very in demand commodity. So what you have is, and a man with a high salary might date a woman with a lot of education who's successful, or might date someone who's not, right? So, but a woman who's successful does not want to date a man who is not quote unquote successful. So you have men who are struggling, who are like men who aren't well off, who are struggling to find a woman, and women who are well off, struggling to find a man. And this is kind of becoming a problem because one group turns to sort of MSNBC and the other group turns to, the far right stuff. So it's actually my kind of take is this issue is contributing to our increasing political polarization, and therefore, which is one of the biggest threats to this country, which is basically the fact that the country is so polarized politically. So I don't have an obvious solution to this, but it is something that a lot of people are too politically correct to even call out by name. And I think it's important that we first diagnose the problem and then start actually deciding, well, what is the right path to actually fix this problem? Because if you don't fix this problem, then the polarization will continue.
And that's really an interesting point. That's a very interesting point because we are being proactive. We're not just waiting for the shoe to drop where it's really an extreme problem. But although it is like you said, it can be considered a significant problem where you've got the income gap. Women are starting to make significantly more money, not necessarily significantly more money than men, but are starting to make more money. And then you've got men who are where they were because there was a movement that got women's pay increased. And now
Yeah.
you've got a challenge of these two meeting of a kind of like a finding a path together. And when there is a shortage of when you don't have a relationship in your life, you don't have a balance in your life. You're
Yes.
sort of you're sort of free to kind of go crazy, and no one's
Exactly.
saying slow down, you're getting nuts. No one's
Yes.
saying you've changed so much. You're
Yes.
just changing and no one really cares because you're not
That's
that
right.
big a focal point in anybody's
Yes.
life. And that is and just like you said, that is a building block to first start with that understanding and then realize what companies can we get on with an ad campaign, an advocacy campaign, a crowd on demand campaign. How could it be a social crowd? It doesn't necessarily have to be a protest.
Doesn't have to be a protest, but I think that it doesn't have to be a protest. But there has to be a innovative way to do this. And basically the challenge is that the sociology, the people's attitudes are stuck in the 60s when the policy is in 2026, right? So that's the issue, and I 100% agree with about it's basically the stability that a relationship brings keeps you more in
In
focus,
check.
in check. Yeah, and but the challenge is that people's attitude, given the changing reality, right? The attitudes kind of have to change where women are going to have to accept that, oh, are you willing to date a man who makes less money than you? Like mathematically, some women are going to do that, right? Like, and that's okay, right? And a man similarly is going to have to accept having a wife or a girlfriend who makes more money than them, right? So this is both parties are going to have to accept that dynamic has shifted and that is sometimes going to be the case. The challenge is that until that happens, this problem is only going to be exacerbated, and I've seen it a lot. I've observed it personally, and I've also seen it in statistics. I mean,
Well, and there's good reason for that because, like we said, there was a movement that said let's get women's pay equal to men. There shouldn't be that.
right?
There shouldn't be that income gap. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
paying a man $20 an hour for the same job you're paying a woman
Equal
seventeen
pay for
dollars an hour.
equal work, which is a cause I completely associate myself with. The thing is that one consequence of that means that this is an inevitable result of that. But the thing is, we just have to have our attitudes catch up with our policy, right? And in order to do that, we just need the social stigma to change. So I hope it can, because I think that there are a lot of probably good matches out there for people that if they could let that stuff go, it would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. But like you said, they're not necessarily. just jumping at the idea of letting it go. They're not necessarily even realizing it is a problem. It's subconscious too that they're not necessarily picking a man that's not making a great income. They're ruling out men that's not making a great income, and they're not thinking that's why I ruled them out. I kind of ruled them out for this or that other reason. But in
Right,
fact,
correct. But here's the thing that I think what's unfortunate is so many people have just been so cowardly. And one thing I like about this current era is I think we're finally slowly but surely dispelling with some political correctness that I think has kept our society so confined. And once we can, because some political correctness basically says, oh no, you can't even talk about this sort of thing because it could be perceived as insensitive. But in my opinion, if you don't diagnose the problem, then you can't then figure out how to address the problem.
right.
So I think political correctness is a big problem with that. So I think that now that we're kind of dispelling with the political correctness, now we can say, okay, now let's actually figure out, well, what do we actually do about this problem? But I think if we can address fast food, social media, and the uh, the radicalization, the gender marriage gap, I think that'll actually create a lot of solutions to our society's problems. And one statistic for you is like young women are the most likely are the highest preponderance to vote Democrat, and young men are actually the highest Republican. I think it's like both groups are like 70-80% one way or the other. So 80% of the young men like in their early 20s are with Trump, and 80% of the young women in their 20s are against Trump. So that's, I mean, this is the sort of symptom of the problem.
And it's really something I've been on this podcast for almost a year and a half now, just reaching out for solutions, identifying problems, not about labeling Democrats or conservatives the problem or the solution. And that's an incredible point of view you just made. And one of the things I like that you just said is political correctness has sort of been thrown out the window because I am not necessarily a political correct guy. And so being a podcaster, I'm not concerned about being politically correct anymore. Sometimes I do get things wrong, and I'm okay with that more than ever. When it got to the point where I heard from a realtor, we no longer call walk-in closets because some people can't walk. I'm like, now we're just going
You're
too
kidding
far.
me. You're
No, and I'm
kidding me.
like, now we're just going too far. I mean, what else don't we do? And it was just an example, and I would love to have more and actually build a book of 1,000 because I mean, it's just got to, but it's no longer that ludicrous anymore. It's
Correct.
actually going the other direction, which is just fine with me. Just say what's on your mind. You want to say, Trip, you're an idiot. Great. Well, let's have that
Yeah.
on the show. Why am I an idiot? I don't want you to think I'm an idiot and never return another email. I mean, I want to have that conversation. Sure, what am I
Yeah.
getting wrong in your eyes? Let's just have the conversation. It may be an interesting part of the podcast. People may focus on that more than any other part of the interview.
Yeah, I
And
think that's important to that we understand the political correctness has been problematic. Now, I don't think it's nice to offend people to be offended. Like I think there's this line where it's like, hey, political correctness is like something like that, like walk-in closet. Like so now we have to change our whole definition of our beautiful English language. That sucks. On the other hand, I think some people use over political correctness as an excuse to say hurtful things just to be hurtful. I don't
no,
support
that's
that.
not that's
You
not
know,
that's not appropriate at all. Not at all. I use one example. I know you do have to go. I'll use one example. When Mitt Romney ran for president, they said you didn't pay taxes on this or that, and he ducked and he dodged and he didn't answer. When they told Donald Trump the same thing, he said I don't pay taxes because I'm smart, and it identified a problem that there are too many loopholes for many successful realtors and different businesses. He's right. He hired the right company to find the loopholes, and he was smart to do that. So now,
yeah.
if the issue is the loopholes, let's address the loopholes. Let's not just evade the question like oh, we'll talk about something else. No, let's not be politically
Yeah,
correct.
let's just admit what you know is what basically what everyone already probably knows, which is there's no rich person that pays more taxes than they have to, right? Like all these
Right.
billionaires, I presume, are taking every deduction possible on their taxes, right? But that's not politically correct to say. but that's what Trump did say, and
He
he
said
was
it right there
well,
on the
he did the
debate
same thing
stage.
that any other of these guys do, presumably, you know what I mean, without knowing
They
the
all do
details.
it. They all
Yeah,
do it. They have to be
so
good stewards of their investors' money, and that's just a part of it. And that's just
that's
that
very true.
simple.
Yep.
So I'm good with time, but I know Adam, you had to go. You want to talk about the company a little bit, or
Well, I will just say that I hope I gave people a good summary. I mean, obviously it's been awesome talking to you again. And basically what our company does is we take on these kind of unconventional persuasive campaigns focused on persuasion, respectful advocacy, obviously legal and peaceful, and taking on sort of nuanced campaigns that other people have either failed to do or other people won't take on because they're too controversial or too difficult. And we use pretty innovative kind of methods. Instead of talking about me, let me actually leave your audience with some tips because not all of them may have the occasion to use my services, or maybe they couldn't afford that. But I want to give your audience some free advice for when they're dealing, because we all have to be our own advocates. And this is not even for politics. We may have to be our own advocates because an insurance company denies our claims or something like that. You know, our flight gets canceled and we have to book a new flight. So we all have to be our own best advocates. So let me give to your audience some advice that might help. Number one, identify who is able to help you and actually able to deliver you what you want, right? So if you're talking to a customer service agent in the Philippines and they keep telling you no, well, they might not be empowered to actually help you with your problem. So what you need to do is first off, escalate it to somebody in the United States at a high enough level to help you with your problem. Like, let's just say you're behind on your rent and you're being threatened with eviction. Well, maybe your property manager isn't in the position to offer you a an extension to pay rent, but maybe you have to talk to the regional manager of the buildings to ask them to make that decision because the property manager isn't empowered. So that's number one. You want to understand who actually has the power to help you. Number two, you have to understand why would they help you, right? So try to reach them in their language. And I'm speaking metaphorically, right?
metaphorically, right?
So if you're the regional manager of apartment building complexes, why would I want to give you an extension? Why wouldn't I just evict you, right? So you could appeal to someone's humanity, but that generally doesn't always work. You know what I mean? Because people are like, hey, I need to do my job, but sometimes you should not feel that you're hopeless. So let's just say you're underwater in this situation. This is a good example, right? You have more leverage than you think. Well, do they really want to evict you? If you maximize all your rights, you might be able to stay in there for 6 months while they hire lawyers and everything. And then you could theoretically trash the place in that time, and they would have to spend a ton of money to remodel the place after, right? They don't want that. So that's your leverage, right? So, okay, on the one hand, they could spend all this money on legal trying to get you out. On the other hand, maybe they could work out a payment plan with you to get current on your rent and then keep you as a loyal tenant. So maybe that's how you reach them, right? So each person has a different set of incentives. I mean, believe me, I know the woman crying at the airline counter. Believe me, I've seen that work, but figure out what would work on the person that you're trying to persuade. So maybe crying will work, but I've generally find appealing to people's logical senses works the best. How does this suit you to help me, right? Why is it in your interest to help me? And maybe there's a stick. Maybe why if you don't help me, it's going to be worse for you. So one example that I always do is whenever my flight is disrupted, for example, and I need them to rebook me on another flight, what I do, I make their lives easier by finding the exact flight that has seats available. And I'll say, I need you to rebook me on this flight. And then boom, what I did is I made it easy for them to help me. And if they didn't want to help me, they'd have to spend a lot more time on the phone trying to figure out a different solution. You see what I'm saying? So make it easy for them to help you and hard for them not to help you, right? Figure out who can help you and try to persuade them in a language that appeals to them why they should help you, right? So this is something that obviously makes sense when you're pushing a political initiative or a business initiative, but in your anyone's personal lives, there are instances where this really matters.
Well, that's incredible advice, and I'm actually going to use it. I do have a project in mind that I'm going to use it on. I would love to talk about it, but maybe we'll do it. We're going to do this podcast again. We'll talk about it. But that's incredible advice that I've just taken every bit of, and I'm going to watch this podcast again to take it in again. And I can tell you that's incredible advice. And like I said, you've been an incredible guest. You're Adam Swart, the founder of Crowds on Demand. You've got an incredible business. Like you said, we all cannot afford Crowds on Demand, the company and the services. But that was just incredible advice, especially you don't need a crowd on demand to get another plane ticket booked. You need
No, you
that
don't.
good advice. And that
Exactly.
was,
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
and that is a good life lesson to learn. That is really a good life lesson to learn. One of the things I always talk about is life lessons. How can we be more successful with the simplest of things? And this is really something that was an incredible, fairly simple, but incredibly good piece of advice.
Appreciate
So,
that.
um, I very much appreciate you. I very much appreciate what you do on every aspect, on the political aspect, on the corporate aspect, on the awareness aspect, because it's all important and it's all done very well by Crowds on Demand. So if you have a phone number, if you have a website, if you have a book out, whatever it is, let us know right now.
On
And
it,
let's
crowdsondemand.com, www.crowdsondemand.com, or follow me on Twitter at CEO Adam Swart. And thanks so much. It's been a pleasure spending this last 45 minutes with you.
Thank you, Adam. You've been incredible. Thank you so much. I am so thankful you took the time to spend it with me. Thank you, sir. This
Anytime,
is the
anytime.
Chair Across the Aisle podcast, and I'm very grateful for all my guests, but this was incredible. Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
You got it.
Thanks, Adam. Thank